Welcome to the MRX Influencers podcast, where you come for the insights but stay for the good times. I'm Dan Fleetwood, and on this podcast, I chat with the best and brightest minds in the research space. On today's episode, I chat with Nader Kobeissi, who is the CEO and founder of Research on Mobile, or ROM. We talk about programmatic sampling and its role in the market research industry. So whether you know a lot or a little about programmatic sampling, I know you'll learn something. Hope you enjoy the conversation that I have with Nader. Hey, Nader, how are you?
Hey, great. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. Welcome to the show. I know it's evening time in Paris on a Friday, so I'm glad I caught
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So for those that don't know, Nader Kobeissi is CEO, co-founder of ROM. ROM is Research on Mobile. So he's joining us today to talk a little more about ROM and then also programmatic sampling and the future of market research. So why don't we get right into it, Nader? Like maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about ROM, and then we can dive into the discussion a little bit more.
Sure. There's so much to say. But before I do, you were mentioning you had COVID. Are you fine?
Yeah, I'm fine now. So it was just kind of like a mild cold. Like, I was honestly, if COVID wasn't happening, I just thought I'd have like a, kind of a seasonal cold or something. So other than that, it's fine. Yeah,
that's exactly what I felt a year and a half ago when I got it.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is it just, for me at least, it kind of wiped me out. Like I would need a nap in the afternoon, which is not normal for me. So anyway, yeah. No, but thank you for asking. I'm feeling better. So.
I feel left out, but
oh, don't worry, Mark. You'll get it sometime.
Yeah, no, but I don't want to get it.
I know. I'm kind of the opinion that everybody's going to get it at some point.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Most probably. All right. So I mean, where to start? Maybe I'll start with a little bit of my background. So I got into market research by pure coincidence. I think, like most people in market research, I don't think I ever met somebody who willingly ended up who chose picked market research.
No, I think Nader, real quick,
it's very tough to get out of it.
I think you're right about that, Nader, because even I kind of stumbled into it. I got a degree in marketing, but then I got an internship at a market research firm, and then 20
that's not far
20
from
years
what
later,
happened to me. I had a degree in marketing, and then the rest is history. So I started in 2004, right at the beginning of panels, when online panels started to grow a little bit. Like even back then, they were struggling to convince people. So I remember clients and research agencies really struggling to convince end clients that online panels are representative enough, the quality is good, and all these things. So and the reason I'm mentioning this is because I think we'll mention, we'll get back to this point later on in our conversation.
Yep.
So I spent around 14 years in online panels, working in online panels in various, some of the big companies in the States and Dubai and in Europe. And then after 3.5 years, along with my partners, we decided it's time to start our own thing. We had an idea. We had something in mind that we felt, there was a gap in the market. We felt that globally, people's usage, the way people will be behaving with their smartphones will be different. Luckily, we were right. So 3.5 years later, we ended up. It was a little bit of a gamble, but luckily it paid off. And so I mean that's as far as how we started the research on mobile. I have a lot more. Would you like me to give a summary of what we do, or?
Yeah, so that was 2017, 2018, and that time frame.
2017, 18, around that. So we officially launched in the summer of 2018.
Okay,
but we started working on it almost a year before.
Awesome. Okay, so then tell us a little bit about what does ROM do? Maybe obviously you can kind of dive into a little bit of what is programmatic sampling and how does that all work. So maybe I think you probably have some of the listeners probably know. Some maybe have some idea. Some are maybe just not familiar with it. So kind of dive into that, and then kind of how ROM addresses that need as well.
Sure, I'll try to give an answer that combines both, like one answer that for both questions. So what we are doing at ROM, at Research on Mobile, is we're, I think, in a little bit of a unique position. I don't think I haven't heard of any other company doing exactly what we do. So we decided to be exactly at the crossroad between ad tech, so advertising technology, and ResTech, which is research technology. And we decided that to let go of all the traditional things we used to do. So all some of the listeners might be aware, familiar with the sample-only projects, full-service projects, ad hoc, panel building, all these things. Yep. We decided to stop all this and to do nothing but programmatic. Of course, I'll explain in a few seconds exactly what is programmatic. But the reason why what we do is a little bit different is because we do all the buying, let's say, I'll call it buying for now, but I mean the respondent sourcing, the way we find respondents, we do it programmatically, and the selling and how we source them to surveys that they should be eligible for. We also do it programmatically. So the whole idea of what we do and of programmatic in general is to eliminate as much as possible the human aspect of it, eliminate all the project management aspect of the business. So not having to rely on emails, not having back. I remember 10 years ago, let's say, or even 5 years ago, in my last job. You would how would you qualify if you had a busy day or if you had a successful week or something like this? There's a direct correlation with how many emails you got. The more emails you got into your inbox, the more it means you either you were super busy or things are running well. And if you're not getting 10 emails in an hour, you feel, oh wow, that looks like it's going to be a slow Monday. The whole idea and what we're doing now is not to have any email. Zero emails. So everything is done programmatically. So what does programmatic mean? It's basically it's algorithms. So it's just creating algorithms. It's machines talking to one another. So we've built our own technology, of course. Basically, it needs, they call it also API. But for those who are not very technical, I'm not going to go into too many details about the API. So in our case specifically, what we do is that we find people where they are spending most of the time. So we want to find consumers, we want to find respondents, people who are willing to answer a survey. Who, of course, would expect an incentive, but we don't want to build a panel. So I don't know if I should get into this, if we should talk about panels, because I could talk for 2 hours, and I know we don't have 2 hours.
Maybe we can get into that in a minute, but as you were talking about that, I know a question that popped up in my mind. Obviously, I know the answer, but I think people are probably thinking, like, where do you find these respondents that come into the survey? Where do can you talk a little bit about that?
The whole what we wanted to do is not to build a panel. We didn't want to build something where people will be part of a certain mold, where people will become potentially professional respondents, because the more they answer surveys, the more they'll know, okay, this time I last 3 times I screened out on the income question, for example. So this time I'm going to say that no, my salary is triple what my salary actually is. But for me personally, and throughout my career, for the last 18 years at least, what I struggled with was incentive models. Incentive models in every sense of the term, and how to build an incentive model that caters to everybody. Because if we're talking about a panel of, let's say, 500,000 people, let's say, just as an example.
How do you do that?
But most panel companies talk about tens of millions. How every single one of those 500,000 or every single one of those million people is a unique and different person. So you cannot say that all of those will be interested in PayPal, or all of those will be interested in donating, for example, or cash. So that's what we wanted to do, and this is what we are doing actually. So what we're doing is we find people where they already are. Unfortunately for humans, but fortunately for business, everybody's on their smartphone. So this is where we find them. We don't want them to download an app. We decided not to build our own app. We want them to be using the apps that they already love and use on their phone. And this is where we find them. So similarly to sometimes, you're using an app. Let's say you're reading it's a newspaper app, as an example. Okay, the app of the Huffington Post, just for the sake of the example.
Yep.
But again, there could be literally billions of examples because there are billions of apps. You get to a stage where a point you can read the 3 first sentences of an article, but then it tells you, actually, to read the rest, you need to be subscribed, or you need to pay $1 or something like this. Or you have to watch this video. And if you watch this video, you can read the rest of the article. So this is where we come in. We give people using the apps that they have, that they use, the alternative to top up their account to unlock a certain level in the apps, in exchange for them taking one of our surveys. The only difference with if you compare it to watching a video, is that taking a survey will take much more than 30 seconds, of course. We only do mobile-friendly surveys, but still, it's anywhere between 5 and 15 minutes, to be realistic. So the incentive that we give them, or what they get in exchange, is much more than what people would get. So let's say if it's a game, as an example, and if you watch a video, you get 10 points or 10 gems. Yep. If you take one of our surveys, it's going to get you 200 gems. So it's much more enticing.
Interesting.
Got it. No, it's interesting. I mean, it makes sense, right? It's human nature. I don't want to pay money, but I'll spend 10, 15 minutes of my time to have access to this.
Yeah,
exactly. Actually, funnily, sorry, I have a little bit of an audio issue. So if I'm interrupting you, I'm sorry. It's because
no, don't worry about it. I'm used to it.
So what we so first of all, we everything is translated into like 60 different languages, because we do this globally. And so just to go back to the business model, and not only to talk about us, but to talk about the industry we're in. It's a relatively niche market where we are in, but we decided, for example, to only cater to only serve or sell. I don't like the term sell, but basically our clients are only survey marketplaces. So of course everybody knows about Lucid and Cint and those types of companies, especially with the recent acquisition. So anybody who can basically, we don't want to be talking to a salesperson. We don't want to pitch anything. Everything is done programmatically. And again, by programmatically, I mean algorithms. So our algorithms and our codes, let's say, detect opportunities. So detect on their own. They're very, that's a smart. That's the whole point about it. It's automated, and it's a smart system that detects the opportunities and automatically recognizes out of hundreds of thousands of live surveys that are available right now, which survey this person who just got profiled and approved by our quality standards, which survey this person should be sent to.
Right. No, that makes sense. And it kind of reminds me of something when I first got started in the industry. It was all about incidence rate. Like, what's the incidence rate? And now it's shifting, I think, much more to conversion, right? Like, what's your conversion rate? So I think a lot of the things that you're mentioning there with the different algorithm and matching them to different studies available obviously helps out with conversion, right? So it's interesting that you mentioned that.
Exactly. It's interesting you mentioned this, because in our internal tools, we call conversion, we don't call it incidence IR anymore, incidence rate. We call it CVR, so conversion.
Yeah,
so that's spot on.
Interesting.
That's interesting. So you kind of touched on a little bit, Nader, but maybe give us like 3 of the differentiators between a traditional panel and a programmatic sample for someone like Ram.
Sure. I mean, I'll give an example. So first of all, like the incentive, for example, is one of them. So usually a traditional online panel, and I'm not saying panels are bad. That's not at all. But they still represent a huge portion of sampling today. However, my vision of the future might be a little bit different. So I think this proportion will drop. So just for listeners or my previous employers, not to think that I'm saying that we came up with we created the future and everybody else.
Right.
We don't want I might be the first French invitee on your show. I don't want to be the last French. So,
I think you actually might be the first.
We are.
Yeah, that's what
we are.
I was
just to go back to answer your question. So the incentive model is one of the main differentiators, and that makes a huge difference because today people are expecting, again, unfortunately, I have kids and I see how they are acting and how addicted they are getting to technology and iPads and phones and whatnot. And it's all about instant gratification. So that is what we wanted to cater to, and this is what panels struggle to cater to. So that is one of the main differentiators, and I'll be more specific. So usually in panels, at the end of when you complete the survey, you don't get the incentive automatically. You need to build you need to have completed on average 25 surveys to reach the threshold that allows you to then get your incentive. And this is a little bit outdated in my opinion. So that's one. Two, it gives you, as far as the, like we touched at the beginning, the professional respondents. So the way we sort, and we're not the only ones, of course, but the way we are doing the sourcing, the way we find respondents is it's called like dynamic sampling. Okay, so it's fresh respondents who don't stay. So it's what they used to call river sampling. So maybe it has a negative connotation, but the reason why they called it river is smart, because the water in the river never comes twice. It just passes once, and that's it. Then it's gone. Then it's always fresh, and that's exactly how programmatic sampling and how we are sampling. So we just get people to come in, take a survey. Most probably it's the first survey they ever took in their life, and then get their incentive and then go. We don't ask them to sign up. We cannot recontact them. We don't ask them to come, and so they don't have enough time to learn and to become professional respondents. And that's why that the example I wanted to give is that there is a question usually at the beginning of I would say most surveys, if not all surveys from around the world, and it's always the same question. It's been the case for maybe 30 years, and I think it's about time they change it. But anyways, hopefully somebody is listening or will listen in the future to this talk and decide to make a change. And the question is, do you or anybody or anybody you've ever met in your life works in market? Do you work in market research or advertising or marketing or something like this? Of course, most probably not. You don't, but you know somebody. So usually you would screen out on this question. Also, logically, you would screen out on this question.
Yeah, for sure.
And in panels, 99% of them, because they did screen out the first 3 times, but because they get a lot of invites to participate in new surveys, by the 4th time nobody's stupid, so they understood. Okay, I'm gonna, if I say none of the above, then I'm gonna move on in this survey. I want to get my incentive at the end of the day.
Right.
And if you look at the people taking our surveys, and again they cannot take it again, so they're just gone. They basically just get screened out. So we end up with a lot of people who get screened out, and that's fine. It's part of our business model. More than 80% of them screen out on this one question, and this is a huge indication that they have no idea.
That's wild. I mean, 80%. 80%. That's quite a bit. I mean,
I think 81% is the exact figure.
Wow, amazing.
Wow. That's huge.
What else could I say? I mean, there are a lot of differentiators, I would say, but I think the one thing, if I want to keep it, more top line, more general, is really less dependency on humans. And not that I have any issues with humans, of course, but just from a business perspective, it makes it's more scalable. Let's say it's more agile and. For example, in our case, 50% of our business, of our turnover, comes while we're asleep or on the weekend when we're not working. So it doesn't need us to be there. I mean, we're there just to make it better. We're there to optimize it. We're there in case there's a bug, and of course there are some from time to time. But other than this, it doesn't need us to. It's just a machine working on its own, doing the buying and the selling in a smart way on its own.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I think it's the big difference.
No, I think those are some great differentiators. So thank you for sharing that. I think, Nader, we have a few more minutes left here. If you can tell us about where do you see the future of sampling? Maybe some high level points in your viewpoint. Maybe can you share those with us?
Yeah. So I think, and I hope time will not prove that I was wrong. So I think the future is get closer to what we are doing. So what we're doing started off by being relatively unique. We are seeing more players in the market. The fact that marketplaces also are taking such a big, and that we finally got a unicorn. And while if you look at the panel companies who've been around, all of them who've been around for 20 years, I'm not going to name who, but you can think of the top 5, top 10. None of them got to unicorn level. The fact that Lucid got to that level in much less time, and less than half the time, that's also a huge indicator. So I think with time and very quickly, so I think in 3 years we'll be looking at a very different map of market research. There will be a lot of M&A, a lot of acquisitions going on. Small fish getting eaten by the bigger fish, but that's very healthy and that's very good. But on the demand side and so I think more brands and more end clients will be relying more on marketplaces and survey exchange platforms, because it just makes sense. It's easier, faster, better quality. They have more control, and the most important for us as clients and as suppliers is transparency. It gives you a level of transparency that you never had before anywhere else.
Yep.
So that's on the supply side, or like respondent sourcing side. I would bet on what we're doing. So I think sourcing respondents directly from leveraging advertising in a smart way, and in a way that also motivates people will take much more of market share than panels with time.
No, that's interesting. Yeah, that's super interesting. I like the point around sort of the unicorns and the marketplaces and the survey providers, because I think it's true, right? Like those are showing the biggest growth. So that's where I think a lot of the focus is probably going to be. So
exactly. The biggest growth and the big smart margins. So I mean, there's definitely something they're doing right in that case.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, Nader, I appreciate you joining us today. I'm hopefully that our audience learned a lot about programmatic sampling. Feel free to connect with Nader. I know he's on Twitter a lot. He's on LinkedIn, so connect with him. Feel free to ask him questions that you may have that weren't answered here. With that, hey, Nader, I'll let you get back to your Friday, maybe a glass of red wine or something, and we'll talk to you later.
I promise I will. Thanks again. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks so much for listening to the MRX Influencers podcast. If you want more information about Question Pro, go to questionpro.com. If you want to follow me, feel free to do so on LinkedIn or Twitter. Until next time, we'll see you later.